Hey there buddies, I'm bringing you another hearing loss video. I want to emphasize that a hearing loss is different from being deaf. So I am not deaf, but I do require hearing aids to help facilitate my ability to hear. I'm going to tell you some of my most embarrassing stories today. I have 3 that I want to share with you that were particularly funny for me now, but at the time they were not so funny because I legitimately couldn't hear and I was sort of made fun of and hurt because I couldn't hear. The first story is actually a school story. A lot of my most embarrassing hearing stories came from school. I didn't actually start wearing hearing aids until I was about 24, 25, I want to say, and it took a lot of adjustment. From what my audiologist said, it takes some time for the brain to sort of readjust to being able to hear things that once you didn't hear because the hearing was too low for you to be able to actually hear the sound. I have lived most of my life without hearing aids, and because of my hearing loss, there's been a lot of times where I legitimately couldn't hear people. So the first story starts at school, and I was in 6th grade and I had a cold. So I don't know about any of you, but when I get a cold, I usually have it transfer into all over my head. And so it started with a headache and then it went into my ears. And a lot of times my colds end up clogging up my ears. And if you're someone who can't hear already, having your ears clogged just adds another layer of not being able to hear. So I was in class and my teacher, it was a math teacher, I'll never forget this. She kept calling on me, I guess, for me to answer a question, a math problem. And I didn't hear her at all. Like, I legitimately didn't hear her. I was just kind of staring off into space, did not hear her, just continued to ignore her because I didn't hear her calling my name. She came up in front of my desk, took a huge book, slammed it on my desk, and said, "Do you hear me, Alexis?" And I remember just being super embarrassed because all the other kids, you could just hear this roar of laughter happen. And I said, "No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you." And she said, "Well, maybe this will get your attention." So she took my books and threw them out the window. It was so embarrassing. People made fun of me for a long time, but I legitimately just could not hear her because my head cold had clogged my ears so severely that I really didn't hear much of anything at all. Okay, so another really embarrassing story actually happens in a school setting. Again, surprise, I pretty much live at school if anyone knows me. But this was before I had hearing aids and I was teaching. I really struggled sometimes, especially with men or women who had quieter voices, and I just couldn't hear them. But I remember I had a student ask me a question and they were all the way in the back of the class. And I said, "What?" And they asked me the question again. And I said, "What?" And they asked me a question again. And then I just answered it the best that I could interpret what they were saying to me, which was not at all the same as what they had asked. So they just looked at me really puzzled, kind of like this. And I looked at them like, "Did I answer your question correctly?" And I remember the other students were just kind of laughing amongst one another, and I asked again, "What did you say? Could you just be really, really loud? I can't hear you." And he said it again, and it was nothing like what I answered, and I was super embarrassed. And that's sort of also when I started realizing that I probably needed hearing aids on an everyday basis, and at the time I still was sort of trying to function without them. Okay, so this is actually something that I've had struggles with a lot just in general, and I think it's something that a lot of people have had happen at some point, but with a hearing loss it happens more frequently. I remember I just met this girl and we were just starting to get to know one another, and I asked her what her name was and she told me her name and I pronounced it completely wrong and it was not at all like her actual name. And she corrected me a couple of times, but I continued to get it wrong because what I was hearing was different from what she was telling me and I didn't really know that. And so I continuously called her this, and over time she just gave up on correcting me about her name. So I called her the wrong name for a long time and we were friends for a long time. So it was super embarrassing when she finally said, "Okay, I can't take this anymore. I have to correct you." And she like wrote down the pronunciation of her name so that I would know how to say it. And I finally said it right. But every time I heard her say it sounded like something different in my mind, and that's what I ended up calling her. If any of you have a hearing loss and you've had these same struggles, I wanted to make this video for you because sometimes we do experience these embarrassing sort of situations, especially if you're someone who hasn't yet gotten hearing aids. Since I've gotten hearing aids, this happens a lot more frequently. It really only happens when I forget to wear them. So I hope you enjoyed these, and I hope it normalizes your hearing loss a little bit for you if you're someone who can't get hearing aids or can't afford hearing aids. That being said, I will see you all next time.